I want to preface this list with one simple fact that you guys need to know. I only played 10 games this year. Of all the games that came out, I only played 10 brand new games. So, this list is more of just putting the games I played this year in order of my preference than it is actually making a top 10 because I only had 10 games to put on the list. First game, number 10, is probably the biggest disappointment for me this year. Outlast 2. I loved the original Outlast so much so it's one of my favorite games ever made. And Outlast 2 was a good game, but it didn't really fill that space, the same space between shitting my pants and getting up and just walking away and never touching the game again that Outlast 1 did. And I'm still hoping that a DLC will come out at some point that will kind of bring the story together the same way that Outlast 1's DLC did and make me love it a little bit more. Number 9 on this list is an absolutely horrible game. But again, I only had 10 games to play. This is Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, a lot of people hated this game because BioWare kind of gave it the shaft. And I can see why. But at the same time, I enjoyed my time with it. It didn't, live up to the hype that the original trilogy created by any means. It did not, fill that void that Mass Effect has in anyone who's ever played the original trilogy. Andromeda is nowhere near the game that Mass Effect 2 or 3 even, and a lot of people didn't like 3, was for me. It was still a good game. It was still fun. I played it. I 100%ed it. But would I go back for a second playthrough? Absolutely not. And the previous installments in the series, I'm itching to play them again. Number 8. South Park: The Fractured Butthole. This game, in my opinion, is not as good as its first, which seems to be a theme at the end of this list. But it's one of those games that, it's fucking hilarious, but it's a little too long for its own good. Whenever you have too much of a good thing, it kind of gets stale and it gets old. And by the time I finished this game, I was just ready to be done with it. The first game was the perfect length for a game that is meant to be funny, in my opinion, and this one just kind of overstepped that a little bit. And on top of that, it also has 2 DLCs coming out. I honestly, I don't know how I can take that much South Park in one sitting. And this game took me about 20 hours to beat, whereas the first game only took me about 10. It was about twice as long, and the first game was right at that point by the time I finished it. So you do the math. I was well and truly done with this game by the time I was done with the series. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't as good as the first. Number 7. Destiny 2. This one is kind of a surprise, and I kind of came to the Destiny game late this year in terms of this. The main reason I'm putting this on the list at all, this would have been a top 5 list if I hadn't just conveniently played 10 games, but the main reason this is on the list at all is because it is a vast improvement from the first game. The first game was god-awful by comparison, and I did not enjoy it whatsoever. After beating the main story once, I never even went back and played it on the other classes until much later after they added much more to the game with the DLCs and stuff like that. And I never got to do any of the in-game content in the first game. Whereas with Destiny 2, I've been able to do those things. I've been able to play the game and not get bored of it almost immediately because it doesn't expect me to play the same thing over and over again. And I think that's a vast improvement, and that's the reason I think it deserves this spot on this list. Number 6. Ghost Recon Wildlands. While Ghost Recon Wildlands is not a super amazing game in terms of story or even its gameplay, it really shines whenever you have enough people to play it with. If you can get a decent group of people, 4, obviously, you can have some pretty good times in this game. I played it mostly with at least one other person, sometimes 2, and I haven't laughed so hard at some of the things that have happened to me in a game in a long time, and probably won't for a while in terms of a multiplayer game. It shines when you have people to play it with. If you don't, it's not going to be as, you know, entertaining. But the game definitely fills its void, and I think it was a step in the right direction. The world is massive. It just takes forever to collect everything if you're that kind of person. But I think it deserves this spot. Number 5. Crash Bandicoot: The Insane Trilogy. Now, I know this game technically is a remake and probably shouldn't be on the list for that reason, but again, I only played 10 new games this year, so here it is. I included this here because basically when I was a kid, I couldn't what's the word that I'm looking for? I wasn't capable of maintaining my attention in one thing for too long. So as a kid, I never really did much in terms of finishing games. I would get a decent way in and then put it down and just never go back to it. So it was nice to have this game, this collection come out and be able to revisit my childhood and finish it like I should have when I was a kid. That's why I put it here, is because it's just a nostalgia trip, and it was amazing to go back there. Number 4. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Now, this being at the number 4 slot is kind of surprising for me, because Naughty Dog is my favorite thing ever, and you can bet your ass next year when Last of Us 2 comes out, it will be in the number 1 slot. I already know. But Uncharted for me is a huge thing. It's the thing that really brought me back into gaming, and I loved every minute of every Uncharted game, including this one. This one was a little bit shorter. It wasn't actually intended to be a full game in the first place. It was kind of a DLC that grew into something more, and that something more was pretty damn awesome. I enjoyed the shit out of this, and I honestly, since playing this, I've come to accept the fact that there might be more Uncharted games from Naughty Dog, or anyone else for that matter, that just, you know, focus on the other characters and not Nathan Drake, and I'd be perfectly okay with that. Number 3. Prey. Prey is one of those games that I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, because I played the original Prey back in the day when it came out on 360, and I kind of enjoyed it. I never finished it because I played it at a friend's house and just never got around to getting my own copy. So I was a little disappointed that Prey 2 never actually came out, because Prey 2 was going to be something amazing. If you've never seen the trailer for Prey 2, if you're into video games, look it up because it looks great. And this game I was kind of on the fence about for a long time, because it wasn't Prey 2, but it also wasn't in relation to the original game at all. It wound up blowing my goddamn mind. It was honestly great. If you've never played Prey, if you haven't seen my videos especially, go pick up a copy. It's probably pretty cheap now. It's been out for almost a year. Actually, no, 6 months, something like that. But it's worth playing. Go do it. Number 2. Resident Evil 7. And its free DLC that just came out yesterday, which is where this footage is coming from. It's one of those things where it came down to 2 games, this and number 1. And I had to go this route because both of them have drawn me to play them multiple times. And I have. I've played both of these games multiple times. But Resident Evil 7, it was one of those games that I just love to play, because once you finish it, you unlock special items. And if you are the kind of person that wants to 100% a game like me, you will be able to just walk through the game after a certain amount of finishes, and it just gets easier and easier and more fun and more fun. Like with Infinite Ammo on Madhouse, which I streamed back on Halloween, that was so much fun. I enjoyed the hell out of that, and I enjoy that in games in general. Give me the ability to just be a god by the end of it, I'm gonna like your game. Number 1. This is a big one for me. Horizon Zero Dawn. When I first saw the announcement trailer for this game, I had no clue what to expect. I had never seen such a thing. I had never seen anything on that scale, and it made me realize how much I wanted it. And it was one of those things where I was like, I was just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And when it finally came, it's like, am I dreaming kind of thing? And since then, I've played the game multiple times. It recently got an expansion that was amazing and provided so much more detail. And I love it. I love every minute of it. I've played it enough times to know it inside and out, and now I just have to wait probably years for the sequel. It's well deserving of a number one spot, as is the official game of the year, Legend of Zelda. But in my opinion, Horizon Zero Dawn